We would like to start, but before we do so, there are a number of announcements I would like to make once again. We have informed you about today's town meeting, but we have invited the citizens from Futaba town so that you would voice your comments to us. Thus, for those who are outside of Futaba town, you are going to be observers, which means that you would not have the right to speak out. Another point. The topic of today's town meeting is, as was said in the commission held earlier, since this is a NAIIC in which they are to identify the causes of the nuclear accident, the topic of today's town meeting, once again, is going to be looking at the accident on 3/11, as well as the issues related to evacuation thereafter. So I hope you would understand that these are the topics to be taken up. In addition, there's a possibility that you might be filmed in the video in the course. Now, Dr. Kurokawa, the chairman of the commission. We would like to convene this town meeting. This is a good opportunity, thus we hope to have very active exchange of opinions with the members of Futaba town. This town meeting is to take place up until 3 o'clock, which means that we have an hour and 20 minutes scheduled. I'd like to appoint Mr. Nomura, member of the commission, to serve as MC. Good afternoon. This is Nomura, member of the commission, as was appointed by the chair. Today, we are to have the town meeting, and it may be better if there is an MC to facilitate the discussion. So allow me to serve as the MC. I'm not used to serving this position. I may not be able to do a good job, but please do bear with me so that we would have valuable exchange of opinions with all of you. I'm a professor at the university, so I give my lectures standing up. I shall be standing up for the next 80 minutes. It may interfere with your view, but please bear with me. Furthermore, before we came to this hall, we have visited Kisai High School so as to see, although just for a short time, the difficulties that all of you are experiencing. And all the members of the commissions have felt firsthand the difficulty that you are going through. In that sense, I do hope that you would share with us the difficulties you are going through at the moment. As the Secretary General has informed us earlier, the members of this commission is to identify as why this accident of 3/11 has taken place. And up to that point, how was it that you were looking at the nuclear power plants, and after the accident, as you are to evacuate, what were the difficulties that you went through? These are the comments we would like to hear from you so that they will be compiled in the report we are to issue. So if possible, we would hope that you would tell us your views on these points. It may be that some of you are tense, but please do be frank and relax as you talk to us. And I do hope that you would feel free in discussing your thoughts. Oh, I see a hand already. The person in the very front row. Oh, there is no need to identify yourself. For those who wish to introduce oneself, please do so, but there is no need to identify yourself. You can go directly into what you would like to share with you. I'd like to thank the members of the Commission for coming this afternoon. I am a farmer in Futaba town. As the town mayor has said, it's not that the citizens of Futaba town are in this situation because of our preference. There's not a single citizen who's here with this preference. To be blunt, I think there's a great responsibility on part of the state and TEPCO. Later on, probably there may be people related to compensation, but I would like to discuss with you my feelings as why we are in this situation. Immediately after the earthquake, I evacuated to the community center. You might know our house collapsed and the barn collapsed as well. But at that time, I felt that if something should happen, then I need to evacuate myself to the community center, as one should do. On the following day, we were told that we had to go to Kalamata. I believe it was communicated to us from somebody from the police force in the protective gear. We thought that we could return to our homes very soon, so we were in the outfit that we were working. So it's not that we took the evacuation too seriously, but it's true that it did cross our mind when the whole family had evacuated. As I listened to what's being said, whether it was the state or TEPCO, I think they had the opportunity to tell us, to the citizens of Daba and those who have suffered, as what was to take place. Thinking about the off-site center as an example, I'm told that all the staffs have left the off-site center. That was supposed to be the center for the time of emergency. Why is it that you created off-site center where nobody's going to be there at emergency? How regrettable. Lots of tax money were used. I wonder what the off-site center was for. And because of that, we didn't get the information. So far, we have been trusting our mayor, and things have happened. I'm glad that I evacuated with my family, but because of the lack of information, there are people who remained in Fukushima. And for these people, they are going to have more concerns. They would think that if they had more information at that time, they would have evacuated at a more appropriate location so that they would be able to foresee what is going to happen to them from now on. We need to consider the future, and since the electricity was suspended, there was a blackout. In addition, the standby power was not usable. But I must say, people talk about the crisis management system, but it's so regrettable that not enough efforts were put into that. Of course, with the earthquake, there was some preparation, but not enough towards tsunami. Whether tsunami would hit us or not, the fact that all the power was lost, and if the power was still available, things would have been so different, and we would not be in the situation we are placed in at present. Therefore, I do hope that this would be addressed properly. And at the off-site center, they should have the backup power source available, but not limited to that. They could resort to solar power, for example, and the same for disaster radio, in which new technology could be resorted to so as to disseminate the necessary information. I hope such efforts will be made. Thank you very much. You've made a very important point. There's a hand that I see, but is it related to what's being said? If so, I would like to invite those speakers first. It was mentioned that no information was available at the time of evacuation. Would you care to touch upon that? I thank all of you for coming. Let me be very honest with you. Right now, our mayor, Mr. Itogawa, has explained in details. What I was surprised the most is that at 5 o'clock in the afternoon of the 11th, that the serious report was being made. However, the citizens were not informed about that at all. The issue of the alert was communicated to us through the disaster radio. But Since then, nothing was communicated to us, and it was 9 o'clock in the afternoon that we were instructed to stay inside. At that time, I was in a place called Mesaku, which is 4.3 kilometers away from nuclear power plant. And my house was damaged quite substantially. And as been said from the past, when there is a major earthquake, we are to place beddings in the garden and to sleep. I went along with that, and I wanted to go to bed soon. There was the evacuation order, so I went to my neighbor's house. We spent the first night there, and it was 7 o'clock in the morning that we received a phone call of the order to evacuate. This came from an official of the town government. The content was that we are to evacuate to Kamata, and that was it. Those were the only words voiced. Why is it that the town mayor knew on the previous day at 5 o'clock in the afternoon? Why is it that you did not tell us that information through the microphone? I must say that I regret that very much.
That is because we did not know how we can evacuate, in what manner, and what situation we are placed in. We just had no idea. I had a failing health, so all I had was some drugs and medicines in my bag, and all my wife had was some money and bank book for accounts. And since our car has broken down, we shared a car with our neighbor and evacuated. But at a later date, out of the 8 villages and towns, there was just one mayor or the village chief of Kawaguchi has communicated to the residents using microphone. This was a quite moving story, and they have the recorded tape. So I sincerely hope that I can hear that speech later. But if there was such serious report, the mayor should have communicated it to us so that we could be in the right set of mind. Given all that, in mid-April, there were so many things that went over my mind, which led me to send an open letter of inquiry to the local office with 13 questions, and no response have been made. They are extremely insincere. And let me say one thing. Our first evacuation center is a place you visited, the Kisai High School. And the second evacuation center was a hotel called Listel in Awashiro in Fukushima Prefecture. We moved to the evacuation center starting 4th of April. I happened to be in my wife's maiden house in Awashiro. And after I learned the news, I visited the place every day. And starting the 10th of April, I decided to evacuate to the second evacuation center, the Listel Hotel. And we made a repeated request to the town mayor to visit us. But the town mayor never arrived. Only in the 8th of June, we were able to have some talks with substantial time, and we had some serious discussions. But ever since that time, we never had the opportunity to see the town mayor ever again. So the mayor has been saying something quite nice during the presentation. I fully agree with him. But we, as the residents who live inside Fukushima Prefecture, we want to talk to the person in charge. We want to talk to the leader, especially in times of emergency. At maximum, there were 820 evacuees in the hotel. So it turned out that this was a hotel that I was engaged in the construction. And this hotel was used as an evacuation center. I became the top of the community council, And the person who is also here became the vice chairman. And there are some old boys from the local municipality offices became the secretariat. And there were only two staff from the municipality offices, and there was shortage of staff. And we made a repeated request. We made repeated phone calls over and over again, asking for a helping hand. And the response was quite regrettable. And also, as another important piece of infrastructures, we talked about the communication networks. We were never capable of reaching this local office. No matter how many times we called the office, we were never able to get ourselves through to the local office, no matter how many times. I've already remembered the phone numbers, that is and I knew the cell phone numbers of the town mayor, so I called him several times. And twice I talked to him. But from some point and onward, I was never able to communicate with him over the mobile phones, so we felt quite isolated. Well, in any case, so my story might be rather lengthy, but we were in the evacuation center in Fukushima prefectures, and temporary shelters were building up. And town mayor has mentioned about the request for the town shelters. The request for the town shelters were made in mid of July, and we finally made a request at that time. So the construction was completed at the very last for the residents, and many people were quite worried. There has been a word or the rumors that we must leave this hotel by the 15th of July. I tried to convince the residents that that would never happen, but the residents were so worried, and that kept them quite unstable. And the timeline was moved to the end of July, end of August, and then to end of September. So many of the residents who evacuated at the Listil Hotel decided to rent a house before the temporary shelters were built because they were so confused. There has been a prefectural notice telling us that as at the 30th of October, the evacuation centers will be closed, both within Fukushima prefecture and outside of prefectures. And accordingly, town had made a request that we leave the evacuation center by the 30th. And we must report that to the prefectural government. I have never worked for municipality offices, so I did not know how to deal with the administrative offices as a community council chief. So therefore, I spoke to the person in charge in the support center and the response headquarters in the Fukushima General Affairs and Municipality Administrative Office, and I spoke to the person quite frequently. And the key word was the freedom and discipline, which is written by Mr. Ikeda. It was a book I used to read a long time ago. And based on the models of that book, I somehow managed to continue the evacuation, the lives in the evacuation centers, but it was very difficult. The hotel staff as well as the members of the municipality offices worked quite hard, but it was very difficult. We were not able to communicate well. But as at the 30th of September, all of us, 800 residents, left the evacuation center, and none of them were left behind. So I think I got the gist of it. Is it too long? No, but I want to continue. Okay, you don't understand. We need to continue. Sorry, I will try to I will try to get to the point because my presentation is getting too long. As you saw, the Kazo, they're still keeping the evacuation center. This is considered to be an exceptional case that I gather. So you have the right to conduct inquiry into this issue. I have 4-page document from Tokyo. It says that you have the right to conduct inquiry regarding the legal executive office as well as the administrative office and so forth. So therefore, okay, I understood. I want to take your point. So that is to say that we want you to treat us equally because these are the things that are critical to the people. We must be treated equal. I would like to ask you to exert your rights to inquire. With that, I'd like to conclude. Thank you very much. Yes, after hearing that, I felt very sad. So I believe that before the accident occurred in nuclear power plant, I'm sure that the residents of the Futaba town were living in perfect harmony. But ever since this accident, the response to the evacuation was different, and there were some disparities in the way that crises were handled. So many residents began to see each other in a different view, or might start to see each other in a rather critical manner. So maybe this could be counted as one of the damage of this accident. That's what I felt. And we only managed to visit the Kisai High School this time around, but we as our panel members or the committee members, we are actually visiting all of the residents who were hit by this disaster and hearing their opinions. So it is not we are just listening to a biased opinion. And I would like to give an equal opportunity to the residents of different areas. And I would like to ask for your sincere cooperation because we will have some chance to hear from you. So I see somebody raising your hand. So please.
Excuse me. Maybe I'm going to be an outsider. Can I speak here now? The members of Futaba Town? Thank you very much. I'm sorry. We are to limit the speakers to those from Futaba Town. Would you refrain from making a statement? I'm sorry. Right now, I am a member of Futaba Town. It used to be part of NAIIC, but now it is Futaba. There's something I would like to say. What do you mean by that it is Futaba at present? I'm sorry. There's something I want to share with you. I would like to explain about the time of the accident. Up until the 17th, I was in Futaba County and Futaba Town. What came to my mind right away is that people didn't know about the radiation and how you need to be concerned of. There was the blackout. There was no communication channel. I heard about the explosion of Unit 1. And a certain newspaper company has said that they need to vent out on number 2 and number 4 because if there's accumulation of hydrogen, there's a possibility of explosion. I was told that they are journalists at TEPCO, so we were to communicate that. But if you take the roof off, then there will be seawater, and there is a way to inject the seawater, and I have not confirmed whether this was communicated or not. When there was the explosion of the 3rd unit, we had no idea how the town was contaminated. Thus, I went to the off-site center. Then I was told that there was loss of power, so nothing was known. At that time, when the 3rd unit exploded, a member of the self-defense force was smoking outside. It was just prior to the explosion. It exploded when I was there. The explosion was slightly different from the explosion of Unit 1. The member of the SDF had no mask, and I said there could be internal exposure, which is irreversible. So I told him to go inside into the off-site center. And there was the GM2, for example, and there was a gentleman who evacuated from Okura town, which was within 3 kilometers a radius. At that time, it was no situation to measure. So when we measured using the survey meter, it was beyond the limit because it was the range of 30 kilometers. CPM was used, but it was beyond the limit, the upper limit. So we asked that man to take his his clothes off, and in the cardboard there were what's called the tie bag, which is a white outfit, and lots of them, and the masks were also available. So we asked this man to change into tie bag, and we told the SDF people to go outside wearing a mask without fail. I had no knowledge of the level of the dose. I have a younger brother over here, and I called him saying, "Where are you?" And he said, "Kauchi." I said, "No, get out of there as quick as possible because the wind is blowing towards that direction." The reason why I came to know of it is because thanks to my son. My son was watching the TV, and there's an adapter, and he knew which was the direction of the wind. As a result, it was blowing from Omaru district to Tsushima district, and at the time of number 3 unit, on a short time, it blew towards the ocean, but he knew about it. And I think there was a major effect in the number 1 unit, and maybe somewhat more in the number 2 unit. We knew that because we were at home at Okaki Dam. In order not to see the breakdown of the dam, they took the water out, and the wind was so strong, and the storm was blowing towards Komaru district. That's the fact. What's great about a town mayor of Daba is that since the dosage was going out, he communicated, "We need to take care, and we need to evacuate to Saitama." And people of Namie did not evacuate. If possible, we wanted them to evacuate to faraway place. I believe that the judgment on part of the mayor of Daba town was giving highest priority to the safety of the community citizens. That was my wish. I told newspaper why. For those within the 50 kilometers, they should place what's called the bag filter so as to clean the air in the gym, for example, so that they should be breathing cleaner air by staying inside. But it didn't work. You would understand, wouldn't you? That's why the mayor of Daba town was great. He's worth the respect of all of us, and I want other mayors to emulate him. He knew about the danger, and he was so calm in exercising his judgment. I truly, truly respect him. Another point is disclosure of the information. I don't know whether it's distributed by the prefectural government or the national government, but there's what's called the strontium. I'm sure you know about it, but this accumulates in the bone. It's necessary to disclose the information, otherwise people will be placed in difficulty. The numbers for the strontium in Fukushima Prefecture is from the document that I have, and the max was 130, in case of Gedo 170, but according to the report by MEXT, in Soma and in South Soma City, there are places exceeding 10,000. However, that's not noted in the document at all. And this is being given to the heads of the towns and villages. What does it mean? Aren't you mad? I am mad. I wonder who's considering the safety of the children. I'm already past 50, so it's okay. It's only 10 years, 20 years. Then I don't have to pay for my pension. But what about the children who are only 5, 10 years old? What happens if they become sick 10 or 20 years from now? Think about it. Who's going to take care of them? What is more important? Is it the money and the economy or the lives of the children? What do you think is more important? Think about that. These are the children who's going to succeed us, and if they are not going to be around, who are going to do that? Don't you think about that? Who thought about that the most? It is the mayor of Daba town, and who can criticize him? Nobody can criticize him in that situation. We understand your feeling very much. We have the same feelings, and we would like to listen to the comments of all of you, because nobody represents the government as members of the government. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. We are different from the Government Investigation Committee. We are not the members of the government. We are to represent you because we have been selected by the Diet, who is representing all of you. So we are representing yourselves. We like to listen to what you say, and there could be differences in opinions, but we would like to incorporate that into the report. What you said is extremely important, so that we would like to keep in mind. Thank you so much. I do apologize, but we like to have as many people as possible to speak. Thus, I do hope that each speaker will be as succinct as possible. Yes, I see a hand. My name is Kano. I think the question was raised about the children earlier. And in the future, people talk about reconstruction, but there is nothing done to the children at present. The state government is saying there is no impact right away. But if the parents are being exposed, the children under the age of 3 have not gone through internal exposure test. And if the parents are being exposed, then I'm sure there are special experts for the children, but it's said that the impact of the radioactivity to the children is going to be 3-fold or even 5-fold of that of the adults. But nothing's done by the national government nor the prefectural government. And I must say I regret that. And in the internal exposure test, it's going to be different as time goes on, but no testing is being carried out. We are going to be the parents, and if something bad comes out in the children, what should we do? There's no direction that's been presented to us, and there are no policies which direct us, which I believe to be truly a problem. And before you compile the report, even if it's an interim report, I don't mind the format, but I do hope that you would approach the members of the Diet so as to change the system and to amend the law. Unless the parents protect the children, who's going to be protecting the children? And there is no going to be the future of Japan, the prefecture, the region, unless we protect the children, and there shan't be any reconstruction. I do hope that the members of the Commission will be fully aware, and please do protect the future for the sake of our children.
Thank you very much. This was an important suggestion. So we also have a radiation expert, so we would like to be sincere in responding to your comment. Thank you for waiting for a long time. I'd like to ask your comment now. So I suppose all of the things I was willing to say was said by somebody else. But as Mr. Sakiyama has asked us earlier, so we felt that the TEPCO was absolutely safe, and there will be no possibility, zero possibility of explosion. That's how I was told over several decades. So when I was evacuating, I never thought that this would truly happen. So I evacuated with the plain clothes I was wearing. And now I'm in this arena, and then to Kisai High School. I think that the person who we can be most reliable is the town mayor of Futawa. And every morning, whenever I see him, he would greet us, and he's always cleaning up the yard, no matter how cold the temperature will be. So sorry, because the things I was about to say was said by everybody else, so my story is rather patchy. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Sakima has also asked this question with the town mayor. So I guess the critical point for our research is how you've been told about the nuclear power plant and how you understood the risk and how you were making your living nearby this nuclear power plant. And you just told us that you were perfectly convinced that the nuclear power plant is safe. And this, we attach a grave importance to this comment. So we've been hearing stories. If there are any comment, or if the panelists would like to ask questions to the residents, well, this is the town meeting, so we might want to have some questions, or you might have your comments regarding the things that are being told. Does anyone like to make a comment or questions? Anyone? I'm Hachisuka. I would like to ask those who were engaged in the farming. So when you evacuate, were you told by the police? So did you have any question in your mind as to what would happen to the nuclear power plant in times of the earthquake? Okay, you're the one who made the first presentation. Yes, please. So in the evening of the 11th, I was in the local community center. I believe it was the next morning. I believe it was a police officer wearing white protective suit. I don't think it's anybody from NISA or the Nuclear and Industrial Safety Agency, but I believe that it was something like the nuclear power plant is in a dangerous situation, and we were asked to evacuate to Kamamata immediately. So we thought it was perfectly safe. I myself was convinced that the nuclear power plants will be perfectly safe. Maybe it's 90.99% safe. Maybe, of course, there were some concerns, but we had encountered some minor troubles before that. But it was immediately dealt with by the national government or the TEPCO. So I did not imagine that there is a possibility of us never coming back to this place. So I evacuated with a light-hearted feeling that I will be able to come back to my house quite soon. And the areas where I live, the roads are quite narrow. It's a prefectural road, it was quite narrow. And we were trying to evacuate through the congested road. I knew some of the local roads from Namiye, Tsushima, and to Kamamata. So usually it would take only about 1 hour or even less, but it took 4 hours for us to evacuate. It is a state road, but it was very difficult because the road was so congested. It was very difficult even to pass by. So there is a nuclear power plants, but no road was constructed. So it was not useful when it comes to the accident. So when you actually encounter the earthquake, it never comes to your mind that the nuclear power plants could be at risk. Is that it? So maybe you were at the community center, but you were not worried about the nuclear power plants, right? Yes, that is right. I thought that some of the power poles going down or some of the cracks in the roads and so forth. But I never dreamed that such accident will happen in a nuclear power plant. Even in my wildest nightmare, I never dreamed of such a situation. Yes, thank you. So during the comment, many people were nodding to that comment, showing their agreement. So how about you, Ms. Hachisuka? You live in the town of Okuma yourself, right? Yes. I am from town of Okuma. I never imagined. That's a true story. Thank you very much. Okay, I was thinking of asking a panelist for comment, but there is somebody raising your hand. Lady in the middle, please. I live in a place maybe 1.23 kilometers away from the nuclear power plant. The government says that the duration for the power plant will be 40 to 60 years, but I believe it should be set at 40 years. I share the pain with all of you, how I evacuated, the routes, and so forth. So now the discussions are ongoing with respect to the duration of the nuclear power plants to maybe 40 to 60 years. I think it should be set at 40 years. I have the reason for that. Maybe from 5-6 years ago, I was actually hearing these sounds of the power lines moving. I told TEPCO, why this bizarre sound coming out of it? And the sounds continued day and night. And sometimes it stops, but in the winter, I hear the loud sound of the power lines. And I called TEPCO because I was so worried. And TEPCO told me that there is a circulation of air using a big fan. It is the sound of that. But the sound can get quite big and can get quite small. And I always go to the second floor in order to do my cleanings. And I was so disturbed by the sound, and I was wondering what it was. So there are so many discussions about 60 years or 40 years, but I'd like to ask you to set the duration years at 40 years. Thank you very much. Okay, somebody at the back. In our house, we happen to have the disaster radio, and the disaster radiation can be used both by batteries and plug-in. So it so happened that when I was using that disaster radio in my house, I was using a plug and no batteries were inside the radio. And because of the earthquake, there was a blackout, and I was not able to hear the radio at all. But as I was evacuated, my neighbor, a house next door, was listening to the radio using batteries. And they told me that the radio is telling us to evacuate, so I decided to evacuate because of that. In other regions as well, if you are trying to communicate through the disaster radio, you should rather use battery than plugged-in system. So there could be some blackouts because of the disaster, and if you cannot use the disaster radio, you can be quite panicky and you will be able to respond to the crisis appropriately. So if you have batteries within the disaster radio, it will be more useful in times of disaster. So the disaster radio was continuously coming in. So if you have the power sources ready at hand, so I suppose that if you were to raise the disaster radio, it's better to have the batteries. And when we were evacuating, we didn't have anything with us, but we just took our dog with us. But when we arrived at the evacuation center, we were told that no pets are allowed. In the Kawamata evacuation center, I had no choice but to keep my dog in my car. But when I was about to go to Saitama, the dog could not take a ride in the bus as well. In the arena, I was not allowed to bring in my pet. So I happened to have a relative in Saitama prefectures, and my relative said no pet allowed, so I had a real hard time. So as for the evacuation centers in times of disasters, there are many families who keep their pets. It's like their family members. So I sincerely hope that maybe all the pets can be gathered in one place, maybe inside the evacuation center, and that will be truly, I will be truly grateful if that could happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. When we talk about the crisis management system or evacuation system, we can talk about big issues, but what was just said is a statement only from those who have experienced it firsthand. And what is important is to have the countermeasures in place to the details, as was said. This is going to be an important lesson that we can draw from the experiences you have gone through. There was a statement about the age of the nuclear power plants, which is a very important issue related to the policy of the life of the nuclear power plants. And it seems that many of you, even if you have some concerns, would not get a response when you voice such to TEPCO. However, for those of you who live in the community where the nuclear power plant is placed, there should be a system in place in which if you raise a question, you should get a response from the power plant. And I thought that's another system that is necessary. It may be difficult, but that's something we would like to also consider. I see a hand, please. I am a member of the Information Conference of TEPCO, and I have been serving my third term, being selected from the town. Here, we talk about the issue of the aging of the nuclear power plants. There was the attendance from NAIIC. Originally, the first nuclear power plant started saying that the life would be for 30 years. Now it's more than 40 years. At that time, we asked the question to the NAIIC, and they say that parts are being replaced, so we have no reason to be concerned of. And we felt that nuclear power plants are going to be safe and secure for 40 years. That was the input. And on part of the Nuclear Public Relations Committee in Tadotsu of Kagawa Prefecture, we have experienced the earthquake at BWR. The intensity of the earthquake was 5+, and they said, please look at the piping. There is no misalignment, and the input became stronger. I manage a gas station, and on the morning of the 12th, as Kuwata-san has said, I was told to evacuate to Kawamata, but I'm ashamed to say that there was no gas in a vehicle. So I was going to go to a gas station, but the police of Futaba police station in protective gear had ropes around a gas station, and there was no instruction from TEPCO. It was the police in protective gear. And I asked, how come you have the protective gear? And I couldn't even believe that the nuclear power plant was to explode, because that was the result of 40 years of input of safety of the nuclear power plants I've heard for the last 40 years. NAIIC people said it's absolutely safe, no concern is necessary. So when I go to Tokyo, I used to say that, do you know where the electricity comes from? And the recipient would say that, am I a secret agent publicizing the TEPCO interest? But I had that much confidence for the last 40 years. To live in a place where a nuclear power plant is sited. Thank you so much. During the past 40 years, for many, many years, I can understand that you felt and you were told that nuclear power plants are safe. Should I give the microphone back to the members of the Commission? Mr. Yokoyama. I'm sure you felt it to be critical when the nuclear power plant had exploded. But the radioactivity or the contamination of radiation is not visible. So it is important to have the information. It's not that everybody lives with a dosimeter every day, so it's difficult to get the information where it's going to be safe and where it's not. So it must have been very difficult for you to make the judgment. I wonder if somebody could comment on this. Yes, the person in the front. It's been more than 10 months since I evacuated after this accident. And what I feel very much is the way that the national government is disclosing the information. Nothing comes out in regard to the information on nuclear power plants. This is an information that's relevant to the lives and the property of the people, but no information is shared. Even if they are to share the information, they are not willing to do so, but they have no choice, but would disclose the information, whether it's the result of the speedy or the meltdown, or whether it's the minutes of the nuclear safety countermeasures headquarters. It's inexcusable that no minutes are being kept in a meeting. But they would say so, and it seems that the national government is trying to make this accident something small and diminutive so that they would like to conceal the information. Somebody talked about the contamination of Futaba County. We like to have the information that's directly linked to us. We want more information to be disclosed. Whatever information that doesn't serve their interest, they're not going to share that, but that's against democracy. Let me be blunt. I have major distrust towards the government. Thank you very much. You've said that there was no information, and Mr. Yokoyama has asked the question as how you understand about the radiation. I wonder if Somebody care to respond to the question as posed by the member of the Commission? Yes, I see a hand. Let me talk about that. Right now, we are at Kisai High School as a member of Daba Town. But as has been said for some time, we don't trust the information that comes from the government. Why? Because there's a nuclear power plant in Futaba Town, and there are lots of friends who are being employed by the power plants. And recently, I talked with one of them over the cell phone, saying that things are more worse than they used to be. But that's our hometown. Even if we go home on a temporary basis and we won't be able to live, we want to see our home. And when we get home, we feel a little relaxed. That's why we like to have not just as an issue of the information disclosure, but we have information ready in a sense that is quite serious. For example, recently some are saying that number 4 unit is precarious. That's why if you're going home, then it should be a short time and you shouldn't take your children. We get such information on a personal level. So even if the information is not disclosed by the government, and they would say that if it's more than certain millimeters, you can live, then that person who said so should live there for 1 year and 2 years. And if they're going to be saying, we'll live too, but in reality, we won't be able to go back. We've been here for 10 months. If you live in a city for 10 months, and after 30 years, even if you are told that you can go home, probably age-wise, we are going to be too old to go back to our hometown. Thus, when we talk about our children and the grandchildren, I like to ask the members of this commission that the information to be disclosed so that we get to know the truth of what is happening. That is our wish. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mr. Yokoyama, are you satisfied? Yes. Mr. Sakiyama, yes. Ms. Sakiyama. There's something I'd like to ask. For those who go to school, do they have film badge or do they go to school with dosimeters? What about the children or infants? There are no measurements of the internal exposure? Yes, please let us know. As was said earlier, whether it's infants, those less than 3, I asked the prefectural government what the response is and why they don't do it. And they said children move around. And furthermore, because it's a whole body counter, and they are the system in which one has to stand up to be measured. That was the response. But if you could measure lying down, especially for the little children, they have the nap time, and they could be measured during the nap time, and I wanted the measurement to be done. And they said, we'll consider that. And I said, can we have your response? I got no response. For the health check, there are lots of children in which whole body counter has not been completed, whether film badge or dosimeters. There are no children who have these.
So no worry test? No. Thank you very much. So who did you talk to? So you made a request, but they never responded. So who at the prefectural government was that? You made a suggestion that the inspection, that check might be made during the nap time, and they will just look into it? Yes. I've been asking the town as well, but none of these things are taking place. So as we mentioned earlier, Ms. Sakiyama, during test, I went to Hiroshima, and do you know Dr. Kamata? I asked the person directly. For the Iidate, the children of Iidate, several cases were taking place, but the prefecture has nothing to do with that. Understood. Any question from the panel? Yes. Mr. Yokoyama, please. You mentioned about speed. So when did you come to learn that there is such information? So does that information have anything to do with you? Anyone would like to make a comment on speedy? Yes, please. So from the newspapers and media coverage, I came to learn about the information regarding speedy. So there was such information. So the first information was provided to the American Army and then to the meteorological agency. So the information was first presented to the US Army. But the local cities and towns and villages and the municipalities, we were the ones who were concerned about such information the most. But the national government only presented the information to the American Army, and they pretended as if they knew nothing. So we evacuated to the direction, and later we learned that this was the most likely place to be exposed to the radiation. Then that's how it happened. Thank you. I'm Sakurai from the panel. Well, this may be related to speedy. So there's one thing I would like to ask. There is a so-called comprehensive disaster drill, and the largest of such drill took place in 2008. So does any of you took a part in this comprehensive disaster drill? Yes. So honestly speaking, did you feel the fruit of that drill in relation to the accident? So I would like to ask your comment. Yes. The lady wearing a check shirt. As for this disaster drill, I'm sure everybody understands. Well, we will be told that there was an accident. Please come to the nearest community center. So I went to a gym, auditorium in the town. So for instance, I live within the 3 kilometers radius of the plant. So usually I get the instruction that I should evacuate to the nearest auditorium or the health check centers, or I should evacuate inside the house. And then I will take survey, and then other staff there will ask me, is anybody hurt? Is anybody hurt? And that's it. The drill never helped me in any way with respect to this accident. Thank you very much. I would like to ask some comments. Yes, I would like that too. So, with respect to speedy, looking at several documents, speedy has been used at the comprehensive fire drill, and it has been communicated during the drill that the speedy information is available. So this was communicated to the resident. So does any of you know that there is a so-called speedy? Do you know it for some special reason? So please respond after the microphone arrives at your hand. Well, actually, SIL, that's a technical information letter coming from GE. I was actually getting such information from the US, and I was actually translating that document using my dictionary. It was 7 years ago. So by doing that analysis, you can actually see how the radioactive materials would spread depending on the different climate conditions. So I knew about that in 7 years ago because of and I knew such data as the contaminations and what would happen to the coastal areas in the Pacific and so forth. But I was not aware if such information are accurate or not. Thank you very much. So you were especially interested in nuclear power, or it might be your expertise. But the regular resident didn't know anything about speedy, and they have never been informed of that. So even during that drill, the information regarding the speedy was never communicated to you. Okay. All right, Mr. Fukushima, please. as relating to the health check or health care or treatment if necessary. Well, I'm a layman in this field, and Dr. Sakiyama definitely is the expert on this issue. But so far, has there been any health check, or have you been to some hospitals or medical institutions? Has there been any sort of special measures being taken or being studied? I believe that last week, Minister Hirano arrived and talked to Governor Sato about the special treatment, such as the free inspection or free health care and other issues that would have a huge impact on the healthcare system nationwide. And I believe that Minister Hirano told the Governor Sato that the Fukushima should never make such a request because it will have a huge impact of the nationwide healthcare system. That's what I read from mass media. So I would like to know the status quo and what kind of studies are being conducted looking into the future. Does anybody know? Well, they have never told us about any medical institution that would conduct such tests. I believe that there's one hospital that carry out such special treatment in Fukushima, and most of such special hospitals are located in Nagasaki or Hiroshima prefectures. And I don't know if it's good or wrong, good or bad to say such a thing, but those ministers are here to make a public stunt. Many of us here, the children included, could be exposed to radiation. I believe we were exposed to radiation, but they're taking no measures. Health check, we have to talk to the expert. We cannot talk to the doctor in the internal medicine and try to and ask them to fix our legs and so forth. That's not how we want to be treated. We want to go to the hospital with the right expertise. So we are like the testing animals of the nation. That's kind of the personal recognition I have. So anyone? Would you like to comment? Well, actually, there was a report made regarding this, the steroid inspection at the Fukushima Prefecture University. And there were 26 of them, 0.7%, with the size who has a size specular with more than 5.1 or 20.1. So in a normal situation, those persons must go through re-inspection. Did you know that? I suppose you have the data from the inspection results, Dr. Sakiyama. Don't you have it? Okay, I guess I have it beforehand, sorry. There is a so-called range A, range B, range C, and there's a type A1 and type A2 under the range A. And 2,622 people took the test, and A2 was 1,117 people. It was 29.7%, and 26 members fell in the range B, that is 0.7%. But my understanding that those people who fell under the range of A2 and range B should be inspected, should be checked again. I believe there was a minister who said there will be no further health check. I believe there was a minister who said that there is no need for follow-up check. So I guess the issue is not confined to Fukushima Prefecture, but people are talking the same issues in Miyagi Prefecture, such as in the towns of Marumori and Kakuta. And they are not doing any follow-up health checks. It's been verified, but that's the situation we are in now. Thank you, understood. So anyone can be a different topic too.
My name is Ito from Futaba Town. There are two things that I would want you to refer to. One is in regard to Onagawa nuclear power plants, in which I'm told that the waves were higher than that approached the nuclear power plant in Futaba Town. Why is it this nuclear power plant was not damaged? There was the Sanriku tsunami, Chiri earthquake, and Ojika Peninsula, and all the villages have been washed away at least once or twice in a generation. This was the third time. That's why, because of the experiences, it was built at a higher location, and I believe that's why it was not damaged at this time. There is Gobura, in which there are 5 villages, and I was told that they used this gym to be the evacuation center because it was a power plant in which they had the confidence that it was safe. What about the NAIIC in Fukushima? If you build a power plant at a higher elevation, it's going to be costly. Therefore, they built it at lower site, in which if you have the seawater pump drawn from the water, the cost can be reduced. And I think that's what I heard some years ago. And that's because they felt that in Futaba town, it was going to be okay because there won't be earthquakes. And because they built the power plant the way they did, that's why it resulted in the accident we are seeing. I do hope that the members of the Commission would look into this. Another point, switching gear. I am a member of the core member of activities related to ANRE. And Ms. Reiko Hachiska is also a member, I take it, so that together we went to Kyushu and to see the power plant on the Japan Sea side. As for the off-site center, we went through the training and lecture with others from Okuma town. At that time, the members from NISA came, and I asked a question to the DG of NISA. If something should happen at the nuclear power plant, how long would the off-site center be operable? And I was told that I would come from Tokyo, so it's going to take at least 8 hours before this off-site center will be operable. And I said, if it's going to take 8 hours for you to come to the off-site center, I thought that it would be useless. And I still remember that conversation that I had with the NISA representative. Thus, in looking at the nuclear power plants, which would resume the operation in other places, I hope you would draw a lesson from this so as to avoid a future accident. Thank you very much. Each speaker has touched upon a very important point. I did go to Onagawa after the earthquake. The tsunami damage in Onagawa was quite hard hit. There are hardly any homes left, and some of the high buildings were damaged. There could be some boat on top of a building, for example, in Ishinomaki. However, the nuclear power plant at Onagawa was sturdy, and that's where people evacuated. When I heard that, I was pondering why the difference, and that doubt came to my mind, just like you said. And I'm sure for many Japanese, depending upon differences in countermeasures, they all felt that there would be differences in the outcome. As you have pointed out, I'm sure you wanted to raise this issue. The off-site center was raised as an issue in which you said you regret that the off-site center was not workable. It was pointed out before the earthquake, but no improvement was made. And it is a lesson that all of us should keep in mind and pass it on. It could be other topic, but would anybody else care to talk? Yes. The person in the back raised the hand first, so in that order. There's something I would want you to look into, which is something that's been mentioned for some time. The words of absolute safety. What was the basis in them saying that it's absolutely safe? I don't understand this, even today. And maybe for some 40 years, nuclear power plants have been placed in Japan, and we don't understand what it means. I believe it was Prime Minister Nakasone who started the nuclear power plants in Japan, and different things have come up. Some people would say, in a news clipping, or according to the former president of Yomiuri newspapers, pepped Prime Minister Nakasone and created this blind belief of the absolute safety. Now, once we have the accident, it has come apparent that the people from NAIIC had tried to believe this blind belief. But once something has happened, they would not be back to where it used to. That's why this commission is established, and that's why the members of the commissioning is listening to us. I hope it will be passed on to the future generation as why it was that such a blind belief became rampant. I hope thorough investigation will be carried out so that we can pass it on to the future generations. Thank you. Thank you very much. As some of the members of the Commission have said, it's not possible in the sciences to be absolutely safe. However, for some reason, the people in the society have come to believe this, and the member of the Commission has felt it to be odd. We would like to clarify as much as possible why it became possible for people to believe in the absolute safety. Please. I am a citizen of Davao. You said anything could be said, so I'd like to say a few words. It may be that what I'm about to say is not directly related to the investigation commission, because I'm going to talk about something to follow. Most of the people are greatly interested about the accident, and they have said their comments. Of course, I too am interested. The evacuation road has been proposed to be improved for some 16 years for Nakadori. And whether it is as a town or assembly, they have taken this up. Many people are interested in the accident, but what should be the focus more so is something that has not been touched. What's going to happen to the future? What's going to happen to our life? Our assembly is having discussions with the citizens of the town. We are seeing aging of the population in Futaba. Those over 70 is about 1,700 of the population of 7,000. We would like to go back home, and we would like to pass away in our own home. And many of them wish so, but it's not possible to see the future. For those who are the younger generation, for those who are doing businesses, we are told to start up a businesses and to move on. However, unless the issue of the compensation is resolved, we can't take the next step. In that sense, the members are from the investigation commission and not from the reconstruction committee. So what I've said may not quite match. But though people do not voice this, the issue that they are most interested is the issue of compensation. That is at the top priority. If there's an opportunity, I do hope you would pass on these comments to the members of the government and tell them that there was a strong voice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I hear some applauding. Yes, I do understand your feeling, but there is somewhere some rug between the things that we do, and we're not quite certain as to whether we have the capability of actually responding to your motion and leading it to the improvement. I guess the point is that in the normal thinking is that, for instance, if you're looking for a job, you would have to decide whether it's a long-term employment or short-term employment. And these simple things cannot be decided if you cannot tell the future. And I can imagine that for a person like me who is leading ordinary lives, so this might be a rather departure from the works that we do, but we would like to take your feelings with us. So there was the so-called the safety myths of the nuclear power, and I would like to pursue as to why this was given a birth in the first place. So in the initial introduction stage of nuclear power plants, many people argue that the nuclear power plants are not safe. There are many people who were sort of critical of the safety. But there were such people, but these people's voices were not heard. The place where I live, the Futaba town, is as if to say it's like a town under the castle of Tokyo, then you call the TEPCO. So it can be sort of such opinion can be ignored, or you will have a hard time if you have such kind of opinion. So no one really voiced their concerns. I guess that's how this thinking regarding safety were given birth. So I guess for other issues, the same things are happening. Many gigantic companies are distributing money. And if I say that they were taken in, that my word may be too much, but that these companies have distributed money to the business world, academics, and mass media, and convinced them that it's safe. Okay, please. My name is Sasaki. So I've been hearing the comments from the participants. So my comment is somewhat linked to these comments. So what I'd like to ask the panel members to do is that there's nuclear power plants everywhere in the nation. So until now, do they have the function of the offsite center in other nuclear power plants? Do they have that in place in actuality? And we need to work on that immediately. As was commented by others, because of the delay in the disclosure of the speedy information, there was some ballast brought from the NAIIC district to Nihonmatsu city. And as a result, we ended up building a contaminated building. And these things are coming up. And we're beginning to learn that if we have had the solid information, from the offsite center, we might be able to escape, and we were able to escape in the right direction. And now that we are worried about the level of radiation that we are exposed to, so these informations are quite precise. So there are offsite centers throughout the nation. So I would like to ask the committee members to check whether these offsite centers will be readily available in times of emergency or the accident. And there's another thing I would like to ask the nuclear power plant. This has been pursued as a national policy. And there has been a summit for the local towns and municipalities with nuclear power plants. And I attended the summit meeting several times. And there is the always involvement of the Ministry of Education, Culture and Science. Don't you remember? And on that occasions, the ministry has always talked about the safety of the nuclear power plant during the so-called lessons about the nuclear power, which took place in the junior high schools and elementary schools. Now that the children were betrayed, they were betrayed by the word that the nuclear power is safe. So the government has been instructing the children and convincing the children that the nuclear power plants are safe. And during the summit meeting, it was even said that the safety of the nuclear power plant should be explained in the textbooks as well. And the ministry which has betrayed the children have given us any account. Have they? I've never heard of them explain about it. I would like to ask the Minister of Education, Culture and Science to take a responsible approach with children. And I would like to sincerely ask the panel to take action against the ministry. And I would like to mention one point. Well, this accident did happen, but TEPCO and business operators, and there's issues of the decontamination and the zoning and the interim storage facilities and so forth. And these issues were stipulated in the government report. But what we regret the most is that the offices of TEPCO does no talk about the recovery effort regarding the villagers. they're only enthusiastic about the compensation, aren't they? And they are the ones who actually triggered this accident. What are they thinking? So we might be able to go back home, and we might never be able to go back to our home. So they're the ones who inflicted the damages on us. So they're the perpetrators or offenders. What are they thinking about the victims? Are they trying to get rid of us with money? And they should have a sincere apology. And that didn't happen either. We have this new president, typical, and no matter how many times we've requested, the president never comes to apologize us. So I'm quite outraged. And of course, apologizing is one thing. But we need to know what is happening to the rubbles that are being contaminated. These rubbles are located in the nuclear power plants. So aren't there radioactive materials coming to our town where we live now? Depending on the direction of the wind, are these issues verified? No report have been made. So this might be belonging to a different jurisdiction and not within the realm of this committee. But I would sincerely ask the committee members to look into this matter, and if there is new information, I would like to ask you to share it with us. Sorry, my earlier response may not have been appropriate. So we are not the committee that is aimed to make a proposal concerning the location of the interim storage facility or so forth. So it is very difficult for us to have discussions regarding such a topic. But we believe that we should provide the material to make the judgment to the national government. And as you mentioned earlier, what kind of thinking the TEPCO has. And because the disasters are ongoing, and we should have a clear-cut framework so that the residents can actually go through the health check and so forth. So maybe we might not be able to tell which one is more preferable, is it plan A or plan B, but as a way of responding to your comment, we would like to take your comment in a serious manner. Well, we were supposed to end this meeting at 3 o'clock, so can we extend the time a little bit? So I would like to bring the microphone back to the panelist. Does anyone like to comment? Anyone? How about you, Dr. Furukawa? So I do not have any particular comment, but I am now feeling that it is quite positive thing to do to listen to your opinions. So anyone? My name is Amano. I would like to ask a question to Chairman Dr. Kurokawa. In this brochure, with your opening address, it said the keyword is the people, future, and the world. So could you elaborate on the theme world? Well, when I was about to be designated as a panel member at the Diet, all of us were supposed to make a 3-minute speech at the Diet session. So I was kind of taken back by that, and I was not really familiar with the scenario. But as is said in this brochure, I explained about these 3 keywords: the people, the future, and the world. So simply put, it is unprecedented under the current constitution. So which means that this would have a huge implication with the world. So if the number of the power plants were to increase, that might increase the likelihood of the accident. So Japan is the advanced country in terms of science and technology. So we should be disclosing the information from the outset so as to make sure that these things would never happen again. And this message should be sent to the world. So this is the first private citizen, an independent private citizen chosen by the Diet members in order to conduct the inquiry into this accident. So, and the world is looking at us. And we have to, unless we do something like this, the world would never trust us again. So From that reason, I believe that this is the investigation panel for the people, of the people, by the people. And secondly, the future means that from looking in retrospect, what kind of measures can be taken in order to utilize this incident into the future, and like what kind of measures need to be taken. That should be the gist of our policy. And thirdly, the world is keenly interested in this accident. So as I said earlier, under the current world, Japan should have a higher transparency and share the data with the world, and taking in the wisdom of the world. So if we were to use a nuclear power plant as an energy resources, what kind of structures are there? What is the way to control the crisis? And if there is a better way to crisis, we need to actually invite such wisdom from the world. So it is not that in a condescending way, but we would like to know the feeling of the person who have actually suffered the damage in the on-site. So the most important thing is that we learn from the failure so that we can use our experience into the future. And the world is looking at us as to how Japan would deal with that. So we would like to share the opinion with the other panelists, and would like to make the summary of these frameworks. So I'm sure that you have many opinions, but you are quite rare in the sense that you have actually gone through such experience by yourselves. So I don't know what to say, but your comments are so precious to me, and these have a long-lasting impression on all of the panelists. So we will be visiting the sites from the Sunday next week, Monday, and we'll be visiting the nearby areas of the Fukushima nuclear power plant. And we have actually visited there, and we visited the places, neighboring places of Mrs. Hachika's place. And only a short time ago, people were living, but now that we don't feel any sense of living there, this was a bizarre feeling. So I am Ishibashi. So I suppose that you are keenly interested whether you can go back home, or you must be concerned about the future of the children, or the exposure to radiation. And I'm fully aware of your concerns, even before I come to this meeting. But this might be about a departure from your concerns. But since this is the starting point of this accident investigation committee, I would like to dare to ask this question. So in this accident investigation committee of this Diet member of the Diet, so this is different from the government investigation committee or the TEPCO's committee. We don't have any biased opinion whatsoever. So we want to have a thorough fact-finding research, and we want to know what had happened during the earthquake and the tsunami. So I would like to ask you about the very starting point, that is to say that 2:46 p.m. of 11th of March. The huge earthquake occurred, and the intense earthquake continued. So I would like to ask you if you have a clear memory of that quake. So the concrete situation as to how long it lasted, or maybe the first earthquake was not so strong, or how many times did you experience the intense quake, and how long the earthquake lasted, and how you felt, how many minutes did it last, and so forth. If you do remember that, I would like to ask a comment. Okay, somebody on the back, please. Okay, you were interested in the when the earthquake hit. Yes. On the 11th of March, it is true that it was a big earthquake. I lived in Amaida district in Futaba town. There is a Inari shrine at the back of my house. And there is a big cedar tree that is a natural monument of the prefecture at the backyard of this shrine. So until now, I've never seen the cedar move so dramatically. In this earthquake, I saw the cedar actually shaking, and the height was 20-some meters, and the trunk of the tree was need to be surrounded by several dozens of people. And I could see that the branches shaking from 2 meters and 3 meters back and forth. So this is something I've never experienced before. Maybe I saw it several times, maybe it was like 3 times. So under such situation, I realized that this was a major earthquake. And my wife happened to be inside the house with the dog. So I shouted at my wife, "You shouldn't stay inside, get out." But in the interim, I was not able to stand. I had no choice but to crawl on the ground, or whether to sit down or kneel. That's the only thing I could do, because such a large cedar tree was moving back and forth, maybe to 3 meters, 4 meters in wise. If I had a camera, I could have actually filmed that, but at that time I didn't have a video camera with me. So if I had, maybe it would be quite easy for you to understand how big the earthquake actually was. I happen to have a camera with me today because I wanted to film this meeting, but I heard that it is prohibited to take pictures. But I dared to take pictures because of that warning, but I couldn't. So I've been providing the things I took to mass media as well, so someday I might get the pictures from the mass media as well. But this earthquake was something terrible. Because of the earthquake, the road became impassable, and the cars cannot drive, and you see the iron bridge of the Tokiwa line going down, and we somehow forcibly managed to go through Route 288, and then the police came and told us to stop, and we had no choice but to use the old road. But there has been some construction going in the drainage, and the breast wall has fallen down, and it was impossible. And the ballast was brought to this place, and we somehow tried to fix that. It took until the 8 or 9 in the evening. It was in a very cold weather. So the night we spent the night as such, and 7:30 next morning, and all of you here said that the evacuation order was issued around that time. Yes, actually there was evacuation order at around 7:30 through the disaster radio, and we were told that we should evacuate to the Kawamata, so we did. And then we had the information that this could be dangerous as well. So when we reached Kawamata, we were told that this can be dangerous too, and we should go even further. And second time we went to Fukushima, and this was not acceptable either, so therefore we decided to move. And then where should we go? So we decided to go to Aizu, and we spent the night at Aizu. And then came the information that Aizu can be dangerous too. So then I took a highway bus to Niigata and used the bullet train from Niigata prefectures. And there was no Tohoku line available, so I used bullet train from Niigata and evacuated to Tokyo. And I spent more than 10 days in Tokyo, and now I came back to the evacuation center of the Kisai High School. So I'm sure that none of you here have ever seen the big tree moving. I'm so surprised. So this is the situation that I experienced. Thank you very much. So maybe your intention was different? No, not at all. So anyone who expressed a big earthquake, or how many minutes you felt the earthquake was? Any of you?
I was at home. I was in my room. It was such a big shake, so I wanted to go outside. When I went out, my wife came out too. The height of the waves were like 1 meter. And you could see it waving into the roads so that you cannot stand up. I had to crawl, and I told my wife to crawl. There was the compression fracture on my wife's part, which took a month to heal. And she hit the hip, so she had to be hospitalized, but there was no room in the hospital. The hospital was full. We haven't seen any waves like that. Never a wave that high. And I'm sure that's true with all of you. You can't stand up. It was that. You mean the ground was waving? Yes, that's what it means. It was waving so hard that you couldn't stand up. The reason why I ask is that, unfortunately, many of the calibration of the earthquake was suspended, so that we wanted to hear the first-hand experience to see how severe the earthquake was. Any further comments about the earthquake? At that time, I was working at the nuclear power plant in the control room. It was in the third floor of the number 2 Daini nuclear power plant, number 1 unit. It was like 20 meters or 18 meters above the sea level. So you were in the central control room? Yes. I felt a heavy shake. The frequency was short. It was a short frequency, but there was continuous shake, maybe 3 minutes or 4 minutes. It's just my feeling, so I wouldn't know for sure. But the intensity stayed the same. It felt that the earthquake was never to end because it was shaking all the way out. Impression like this. Anybody else who's nodding? Would you care to share? Yes, please. The lady over there. I was a bit away. At the time of the earthquake, I was on Route 6 in South Soma City. It was at an intersection, and that's when I felt the earthquake. I felt that it's a major earthquake, more severe than usual at the outset. Then I felt it's quite big. That was the first shake. And at around that time, where I can see the road, it was waving. And then for some time it settled down, and I thought it was the end of it. But just about that time, there was a concrete mixer vehicle who was stopped in front of me, started to drive. And when I was about not to see that vehicle, there was the second major shake. And I was within the vehicle. It was like me and the vehicle was on a trampoline, so that I was holding onto my seat belt, so that I was grabbing the steering wheel, but I would almost hit my head on the ceiling of the vehicle. There was a commercial vehicle in front of me which was operated by a woman, and she was hitting her head on the ceiling of the vehicle. I wasn't too sure because it was shaking, but it was like I was jumping up and down together with the vehicle from the ground, from the feeling I had as well as what I was seeing in front of me. I believe the shake lasted some minutes, and I was praying, how long is this going to continue? It was that long. Thank you. Another person? Yes, I see a hand. I was at home, and when the earthquake shook, I opened the door and went out. I saw the students of the Futaba High School because it was close to the back net of the softball, and I jumped out of the house. At that time, there were about 8 female high school students. In the beginning, they were screaming and they were on their legs and arms. I was holding to the pillar of the garage. When I was crawling, it was okay, but it continued for 1-2 minutes. Then came a major tsunami. At that time, the high school students couldn't be on their crawling anymore, so they had sat down. As the other speaker has said, the ground was waving. It was waving, a wave after wave. And what I felt is that there would be waves from the outside, from the left and right, so there were waves from 3 directions which was approaching. In an earthquake, I thought the wave of the earthquake would come only from one direction. No way, it was from the left, the front, and the right. It was an earthquake as though it was a wave from tsunami. As I said, I was holding to the garage pillar, but my car made the noise because more than half of it popped out. I think this shake lasted for 2-3 minutes. In total, I think it was around 4 minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you for the details. We have learned a lot. Thank you very much. Each speaker has told us the state of the disaster. It's painful for you to recall this, but we would like to make best use of the information we've got from you in our investigation. Thank you so much. Any other comments? We are past the time. Yes, Mr. Tanaka, Dr. Tanaka. I'm sorry, just one word. This is something that's been taken up by the mass media, but I'm sure you are most concerned, as was said by one of the speakers, about the health of your children and grandchildren. But we don't hear about your concerns of your own health. We haven't heard much comment. I'm not trying to instigate the concerns, but this investigation is not just to clarify the facts of the accident, but to come up with proposals for the future. What the state, what the people can do is limited. However, should there be concerns, we'd like to know what they are. And we don't want to do something that's not relevant to address your concerns, because otherwise it won't be deemed as proper sets of proposals. So to be more specific, I'm going to say this, that somebody has said that there is nothing like absolute safety in science and technology, because science and technology is not perfect. In a way, we can say so today and now, but because it's imperfect, the science and technology has much room to grow and to improve. It's not just in Japan, but in the world at large. Many of the medical doctors are studying about this, so that if you have some concerns, it's important to let them know of your concerns, not limited to the examples we heard from Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There could be other examples as well. So if there are some concerns, we like to hear them so that we shall be able to come up with the appropriate proposals to address your concerns. I know we don't have much time, and it may be that we can hear from you directly. And unfortunately, I won't be able to receive your concerns directly, but please pass them on to the Commission. I see a hand from the mayor of the town. Maybe the mayor can represent the voice of other citizens. In short, concerns, anxiety, because for one, it's been said that we are going to review the community within 20, above 20, and 50 millisievert, in which Futaba counting is to be divided into 3 districts. But I think this is reckless on part of the government, in which they are forcing us. Nuclear Safety Committee has judged that if it's less than 20 millisievert, it's safe to live. However, in the ordinary lives, it's said that we are not to exceed 1 millisievert. So that I was wondering why they can say what they said. I felt that this is a delineation they've come out without giving due regard to the citizens of Futaba County as the people of Japan. Why is it it's going to be 20 millisieverts? Whether 20 or 50 millisievert, these are the limits for the working environment, but not for the environment where you live around the clock. And I don't think it's going to be applicable to them. So to me, this level of demarcation is rather, or should I say, quite irresponsible. There are even scientists who say that even at 100 millisievert, it's going to be okay. So I would ask to prove that it's going to be safe at 100 millisievert. And I am asking that the report should be placed, but I have not received any report as of yet. I was hoping that if they claim to be safe, to give me a report it's safe. And at the outset, it said that there are no people who exceeded 100 millisievert. How many have they surveyed as a result? Is it true that this is the fact? I'd like to be reported of the actual number rather than just the conclusion. I know the citizens of the county would like to go home as soon as possible. I understand that, but your wishes and the government delineating at 20 millisievert, I believe it's going to be something that you might regret in the future to go along with what's been said by the government, because that's why I advocate that it should stay at 1 millisievert. And it seems that some of the heads of the towns and villages don't understand because they want to go home and they insist they're going home. And this is something in which we don't see an agreement in opinions.
So, like was said earlier, we should be looking after our children, and children's health must be protected by the parents. So, if the parents are kept safe, we should be more deliberate when it comes to the safety values for children. So, if that is all that possible, we would like to put the number back to 1 millisievert, if possible. Thank you very much. So we now had a word from the mayor on behalf of the residents of Futaba Town. Yes, I am sure that some of you have different opinions, and that is only natural because we know that you are all suffering from the pain, the aftermath of these disasters. So we sincerely hope that you will someday have can share same opinion so that you can move to the next step. So our time is running out. So this has been a quite precious forum for exchange of opinions, but I would like to call this to a closing. So myself was quite nervous as to what kind of opinions will be heard at this meeting. I'm sure that there are so many things that you wanted to say, and your feeling was keenly felt during this meeting. But you have made some adjustment so that your comments will be in line with the purpose of our verification and the meeting, and I sincerely appreciate your kindness. And if there's anything that you would like to say to us, as was explained in the outset of the meeting, we have this website where we can hear your opinions, so please feel free to send your comments in any way you want. In Futaba Town, and this is the town meeting for those residents who have evacuated to Saitama Prefecture. I'm sure that there were so many people who were hurt by this nuclear power accident, and many residents live in all different places in Japan. So I would like to take equal opportunities in hearing comments, and so that their comments will be reflected in the conclusion. So with that, I would like to announce the closing of this meeting. Thank you for putting up with my facilitator, me being a facilitator. So I would like to pass the microphone back to the chairperson. Well, everyone, I don't know what to say. I had exchange of opinion with the town mayor for about 1 hour, and we were able to have a candid and active exchange of opinions throughout this meeting. Thank you so much. We are the panelists and the committee members. We would like to sincerely take in the comments that you have voiced today, and we would like to further move on with our research activities. We've been working very hard. There are some mountainous pile of issues that need to be attended to. So we would be very sincere in coming up with a proposal. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. With that, I would like to announce the closing of this town meeting. Thank you for bearing with us for a long period of time. Several housekeeping announcements. If there is any comment like you would like to add, and I'm sure that there were some participants who were not given the opportunity to voice their comment. So as was said earlier in this meeting, we have a special website, and you can send your comment here, or you might want to use a fax, and that's also possible. We would welcome any comment and the ribbon attached to it. We would like to actually collect the ribbon badge that you're wearing now, so please give the ribbon back to the receptionist. And there are some residents from the disaster hit areas, and we have this special bus that is arranged to drive you back to the Kisai High School. And 15 minutes from now, 3:45, the bus will start to Kisai High School. The bus stop is where you arrived. There will be only one break during the drive, so the bus will start at 3:45. And those who can ride the bus will be the ones who use the bus in coming to this meeting. We'll have a press conference, and that will start from 3:50. Thank you very much for your kind cooperation. Now we would like to end this town meeting.